Now the trial is over, E. Jean Carroll can finally talk about the case, and she did. Jumped right on with CNN to celebrate, and in doing so, she revealed more about her scheme to get Trump. We've got several different clips, one where she said that she helped pass the New York law, and that's curious because she filed under the same law that she helped to pass. She also is going to explain how she conveniently forgot during a deposition to disclose information about who was actually funding the lawsuit. And then, as we were told throughout this entire ordeal, this was about victims of abuse. This was about people who have been hurt and damaged by Donald Trump. This isn't about politics at all. No, we turn around and we see that E. Jean Carroll's team tried to get a juror who admitted to listening to Tim Pool off the jury panel because of his politics for a case that's not political at all. So E. Jean Carroll is now acknowledging openly on CNN that she helped pass the law that was the subject of this lawsuit, allowed her to file a claim in the first place.
Can I end on something that I think is really important in all of this, and it's the fact that New York passed this law.
Yeah.
The Adult Survivors Act. They passed it just a few years ago. Were it not for that law, you never would have been able to bring this case. And I just think it speaks to the importance for a lot of other survivors.
Exactly. I would never have this window, this year, of having the ability to bring a lawsuit for rape. Robbie can explain it better.
Well, E. Jean actually helped to get that law passed. It passed last year. We filed, it was Thanksgiving Day, was the first day you could sue. We filed just after midnight on Thanksgiving. And
she filed it the day after the law was passed. They were there waiting at the gates, salivating to get into court. And it wouldn't have happened, apparently, without E. Jean. She had helped to get it passed. And we're asking ourselves, why is this a legitimate law if it feels like it was passed only to enable specific litigation against disfavored individuals in this country? It's not specifically targeting Donald Trump, but if you go back through the legislative history and you take a look at the basis for this, where did it come from and why was it so conveniently timed and exploited by Roberta Kaplan and E. Jean Carroll and everybody else who was involved in this? Seems very, very convenient.
And on something that I think is really important in all of this, and it's the fact that New York passed this law.
Yeah.
The Adult Survivors Act. They passed it just a few years ago. Were it not for that law, you never would have been able to bring this case. And I just think it speaks to the importance for a lot of other survivors.
Exactly. I would never have this window, this year, of having the ability to bring a lawsuit for rape. Robbie can explain it better.
well, E. Jean actually helped to get that law passed.
Yeah, so she
It
could
passed
file a claim.
last year. We filed, it was Thanksgiving Day, was the first day you could sue. We filed just after midnight on Thanksgiving.
These people, they had a whole plot. They were working together. Remember that if you recall, E. Jean Carroll got the idea to file this lawsuit after she met with George Conway at a podcaster's party called Molly Jongfest, said, hey, I'm not going to sue Trump. Met with Conway. He convinced her to do it. He said, I've got a great lawyer for you. Roberta Kaplan. Gave her over to Roberta Kaplan. Whole thing was funded by Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman is the billionaire co-founder of LinkedIn, somebody who joined in on this team secretly. We didn't find out until moments before trial that he was the person who was funding this for years. Remember, this claim was filed a long time ago, but trial just went forward. And so you got to pay for all the lawyers. Who's funding the bills for all of this? Reid Hoffman was, but he didn't want to be disclosed, and he wasn't disclosed. In fact, during the deposition, Trump's team asked about it, and she conveniently forgot to disclose it. Reid Hoffman is somebody who supposedly, according to some of his statements in supporting this, was in favor of supporting victims of Trump's abuse. But in this case, we know there's a little distinction we have to be mindful of. Other stories came out that Reid Hoffman went and visited Epstein's island after Jeffrey Epstein had been convicted of his crimes, and his crimes created victims of abuse, the same type of abuse that people are hemming and hawing about, alleging that Trump did. So if all of these people are so caring about victims of abuse, why are they continually hanging out with other people who have committed crimes or supported abuse of victims? Let me give you one other example of this. We have Roberta Kaplan, who has supported other efforts. In one story, we know that Miss Kaplan actually helped Governor Andrew Cuomo, Miss Roberta Kaplan, helped Andrew Cuomo when he was under attack smear a sexual harassment accuser. This is according to Donald Trump. Roberta Kaplan, Carroll's attorney, was forced out of her role at Time's Up after it was revealed that she advised the public smearing of a woman who accused former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo of harassment. See how that works? So they're not fighters for women's rights and victims of women's victims. They're fighters of Donald Trump. And it couldn't be more obvious, especially when she says now that she just totally forgot to disclose this relationship.
Another thing that he and his lawyers have often spoken about is the lack of disclosure about a big Democratic donor funding part of this case. Was there a reason it wasn't disclosed, and did you view this as political in any way?
No, I just completely forgot that he even existed.
In your deposition?
Yes, in my deposition.
Because Trump lawyers have called that, Roberta, a sign of bias. It raises questions about the motives of bringing this case, and I wonder what the reaction is.
So every single witness, every one of those 11 witnesses who testified in this case, testified under oath and told the truth, not because they don't like Trump, but because it was the truth. That's what this case was about. Who was telling the truth? The jury decided that E. Jean was telling the truth. And there may be witnesses who don't like Trump. There may have been jurors, as Joe Tacopina said in his opening, who don't like Trump. But that process was about the truth under the law, and that's what the jury found.
I wonder what her cut of the verdict is. It's going to be a pretty nice cut, so she's also pretty happy about that. And a nice cut of a $5 million verdict, you know, some of these judgments, you're talking tens and tens of percentages off that part, especially when they go to litigation. So she's having a pretty happy day about it too. And any questions about bias? Well, no, I mean, she didn't even address the bias portion of this. Maybe biased as hell. She just ignored that entire line of questioning and just said, well, they still told the truth. Regardless of their like or dislike of Trump, they still got up on the witness stand and they were still honest about it. Their bias didn't pull them one way or another, if you believe that. So not answering the question at all. But of course, they say it's not political. They say it is about women's rights, even though, as we saw, Roberta Kaplan helped Andrew Cuomo smear another person allegedly who was abused by him. And we know that Reid Hoffman was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted. So a bunch of people who are involved in this case don't seem like they are all that interested in consistency in that stance.